1 minute. And get this hell over with. I'm gonna say a little something fast to the side about Mr. Congeniality, Alex Jones. Not much because I really don't want to waste my entire time talking about the entire video talking about that jerk, and I've said enough about him. I'm not really sure how I even. Well, I know how, but I was gonna say I don't know how I started talking about him, but I guess kind of just scratching for ideals. One day I decided to look through his site, and I decided to make a video about him. I would like to say this: I decided to watch his podcast. I'm part of his podcast, and I have to say, first of all, this guy is certainly crazier than ever, or at least so he pretends. And second of all, he has taken to, in some ways, talking a lot but saying much of nothing about anything. He says a lot, but he doesn't really say anything. And I say that because for at least the first 15 minutes of this fucking video, or rather his video, he literally seemed to just say nothing. I mean, he was talking but saying nothing. And what he was saying is, first of all, he was trying to attack trans people, I think is what he was doing somehow, but he was actually sounding like he was attacking men, and you're really getting a good idea of what he thinks about men when you watch this fucking podcast he put up. But he was attacking transgender people, and he's more or less throwing men under the bus in order to attack them, and he kept trying to say they're pulling down women, but he never said what. But keep in mind, he's attacked feminists. He don't like feminists either. But he keeps saying they're trying to pull down women, and again, this is my problem, and I got some grief from someone on there who pretty much threatened me. I guess it was one of his fanboys threatened me, because I pretty much, above all else, what I said in the comment was I pointed out he's not really saying anything, and what is he talking about? He's not really saying anything. But he kept talking about pulling down women, but he never said who, why, or what. Then he goes on, he talks about abortion while he's doing this. He calls it murder. He says, but it's okay that you had an abortion. You just can't do it no more. So like now he, Mr. Don't Tread on Me, is going to now dictate to women whether or not they can have an abortion. And I'm talking in the first trimester because that's when I support an abortion. I agree with you after that. Like I would agree with Jones after that, it's murder. But in the first trimester, I completely support abortion rights. But the point that I'm making is he's saying a lot about nothing. He's attacking transgender people. He's pretty much attacking men. And he's just talking out of his ass. And it's like, I see now why I stopped watching. The more you watch him, the more you understand. This guy is insane. And not only is he insane, he's not really telling you any damn thing. And he's talking about religion. He's trying to bring God and Satan and all of that into it. And it's not like I never do that, but my religion is more philosophical. It's more like a philosophy, because I'm pretty much a Satanist, and that's really a philosophy. But he's talking shit about Satan and this, that, and the other thing. It's like, that's got nothing to do with like any of this political shit. You're trying, and even the Bible says don't mix politics and religion, and that's exactly what he was doing. So anyways, the point is, I watched that for about 15 minutes. I finally just gave it fuck up. And I turned it off, and I turned back in, and I think I probably watched 20-something minutes of it altogether. But I turned it off and turned it back on later, like not long ago. And I watched probably altogether, I watched about 20-something minutes of it, and he starts bashing the immigrants. He's talking shit about immigrants, Hispanic people. He goes after them. I'm already spending too much time talking about this asshole, but he bashed transgender people, and he also pretty much says, he defends them, the men having to sleep in tent cities, by the way. He talks about, well, that's okay because they're men. And he more or less defends not caring about men and our society not helping men, and says that we shouldn't care as much about them. And men, I mean, that's pretty much what he said. And he's also lying about the treatment of all immigrants. He's trying to act like they don't really have negative treatment. And he said something else weird during all of this, where he says, but let me first say, feminists maybe, if you're a man, feminists may be your enemy, but they are not your most deadly enemy, because at least they're honest. That guy, Alex Jones, and people like him, and traditional conservatives, they are your most deadly enemy. They don't like women either. They're not doing them any good, but they are your worst enemy. A fucking conservative is the worst enemy men have. If you are a men's rights activist, conservatives are your worst fucking enemy. This guy and the dumb shit he was saying That's your enemy. Throwing transgender people under a fucking bus, or throwing gay people rather under a bus to attack transgender people because he doesn't like them. Justifying the mistreatment of Hispanic males because he doesn't agree with immigrants, and so on and so forth. And he has the nerve to try to talk about one time he had to sleep in a car once. When this is guy, yeah, I can tell by looking at your fat asses how poor you are. And he sleeps, and again, the guy probably lives in a mansion. He has a fucking radio show, makes a lot of fucking money and everything else. And he's gonna sit there and talk shit up to other people about, yeah. I'm sure you had a rough life. I mean, he even grew up middle class. So I mean, yeah, but I'm sure he's had such a rough life. The point is, he did that. He talked shit about Somalia. He literally bashed the entire nation of Somalia, and I'm sure I wouldn't particularly care for Somalia either. But the point is, he bashed the entire nation of Somalia. He showed obvious cultural bias in addition to gender bias. He makes the statement that, we don't cut female genitals. No, you cut male genitals. You cut little boys, parts of the little boys' penises off over here, and that's okay because you do that. It's just not okay when they do something else slightly different in another country, or they do the exact same thing to another group. Or actually, let me take that back. Somalia is in sub-Saharan Africa, I believe, so I don't know what kind of genital mutilation they do. It may be a lot worse than what I'm talking about. I'm not really sure, but the point is, you're still a hypocrite. And it's just, that's the right wing for you. They're hypocritical cocksuckers. I mean, the right wing are a bunch of hypocrites. And it took him 15 minutes to say anything. And once he said something, it was some of the stupidest shit I ever heard. But just know that is traditionalism. And that's one reason he seems to, in my opinion, he seems to have taken to disliking men's rights activists. And the reason he does that is because they refuse to support traditionalism or jump on the conservative bandwagon. And a lot of men's rights activists, for various reasons, didn't support what he was telling them to support. So now he's turned on them too. And he's pretty much attacking men now, in addition to all the other groups that he attacks. And he's still trying to tell women whether or not they can have a fucking abortion because he's a fucking asshole. He's a jerk. Now then, that's enough of that. Moving on to something else. Planned Parenthood, back on that issue, the woman that was ousted, and I will go into this, and I agree with the conservatives about some things, but she was ousted because she refused to use inclusive, transgender inclusive language. And I think Trump tried to say, and this is where, when Trump's right, I'll give him credit, but when Trump's full of shit, I'm not going to say he's right when he's not. But he tried to say, it was him, I think he said this, that she was fired for philosophical differences. Well, here's the problem. As opposed to someone working at a 7-Eleven, as opposed to someone who might have actually said something very horrible, like Hulk Hogan, for example, when he made those racist comments, as opposed to them, who are simply employees of a larger company and working for them, this person was in charge of and running a minimum management position of the world's largest parental care and or abortion provider. So she's setting policy. She's not just working for them. She's setting the damn policy, and she's in charge of that. And she's deciding now to discriminate against transgender people. And it is at that point, I do not think that it is by any means unreasonable or incorrect for the people that are now over her to use their authority and get rid of her. 1 minute. But that was a problem. And by the way, I will agree with you on one thing. Planned Parenthood, from my understanding, does allow abortions up to about 9 months or the third trimester. And I don't agree with that. And I assure you, they have much bigger issues than transgender people and or firing this fucking chick. They've got bigger issues. And again, like I said, I support and completely support a woman's right to have an abortion in the first trimester. I'm not talking the first trimester at this point. We're talking the third trimester. Absolutely outright ridiculous, and I will agree with you on that. So, I mean, there's a lot of fucking problems with this country and things going on. And again, if you're a man in this country, especially if you're a young male, or anybody, but especially a male, and especially if you're kind of a preteen, sub-teen, teenager, 12, 13, 14-year-old kid, you're really gonna get it. I mean, we're all gonna get it, but you're really screwed. Like I thought I was screwed growing up. Not as bad as you're gonna be. Not only is the economy shit, not only are we in like a dozen wars, not only do corporations control everything, not only do they not want to pay you a higher minimum rate, but then on the left wing you have the feminist shit that I talked about before, that try to blame men for everything and men are toxic and all that shit. And I do believe in toxic masculinity, by the way. I mean, you can be toxic about anything. And there are certainly elements of toxic masculinity in our culture. I consider, and I think circumcision is a toxic part of toxic masculinity. Um, Much of the pro-military, ultra pro-military culture that we have, that's toxic masculinity. There is certainly toxic masculinity in America, um, but as relates back to where it's so far as that feminism goes, they say men are toxic and they want to talk about men and men are rapists and men this, that, and the other thing. And then on the meanwhile, all the while on the right wing, you have people like Alex Jones who defend mistreatment of male immigrants by saying, well, they're men, they can live in a tent. You know, I had to sleep in a car once. Oh, well, so too bad. You know, he slept up several days in a car 20 something years ago and he's still talking about it. Yeah, you really have a tough life, man. But anyway, you know, that's back to talking about that cocksucker. The point is, you know, you've got that. You've got, you know, people attacking the transgender. They don't. It's almost as if to say, you know, if we can't attack you for being a male, we'll attack you for being transgender. Anywhere you go, you're gonna get fucked. And this on and on and on and on. So on the right wing, you're gonna get fucked. On the left wing, you're gonna get fucked. If you're a man in this country, you're screwed. Absolutely screwed. And for what? Largely because people back in the 50s were not very nice to women on something that is now reaching that is now well over half a century ago. It happened because of cultural cultural practices, traditions that are on the other side of half a century mark. And here we are over half a century later, and you're still attacking men or males who weren't even alive then. It's outright nonsense. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know where else to go with this. I mean, that's about it. I mean, you know, this culture is a dump. But I will say this: conservative traditionalism I will say this: conservative traditionalism is a bigger threat. Or first, let me say there's a threat to men and women, and it's a bigger threat to men than it is women, and it's a bigger threat to men than feminism is, because at least feminism is honest. Conservative traditionalists bullshit you and they scam you 1,000 ways to Sunday. You won't know they fuck you until they fuck you, and they've been doing it. And a lot of men have already bought into that crap, and then they're finally coming around and saying some of what they really think. And the fact that what they want you to do is they want to put everybody back on the grid. They won't put you back in the matrix. They want you working in a 9-to-5 job to pay off in a mortgage and a wife and some kids, and to pay off a mortgage and go into debt, lose your family, end up paying fucking child support and alimony, and then probably fucking by the time you retire have to get thrown in a rest home. That's what they want your life to be, and probably live a shorter amount of time. And meanwhile, fat asses like Alex Jones move their ass into a fucking mansion. That's what they want. So, you know, that's my opinion. Conservatives are bigger con artists than even fucking feminists are. They really are. And they hate everyone. They hate everything and everyone except money. They're a bunch of greedy bastards. And then they want to talk about Jesus. And he said something about, I'm not sure if I went into detail about this, but something about if you harden your heart to children. And again, that's what they do. First of all, let me say this. Well, first of all, let me say this is more important. This would probably be a better order of saying this. It is conservatives who don't want to take better care of largely children and migrant children in fucking what amounts to concentration camps in these fucking migrant detention centers. They don't want to take better care of them. Okay, first of all, it is conservatives who support many of these wars that has led to bombings and destruction of various areas, including areas that contain children. It is conservatives who have been the biggest supporters of Zionistic practices in Israel, where they're bombing and blowing up kindergartens. It is conservatives who, even more than liberals, and liberals have not been as much against this as they should be, who support male genital mutilation of infants. It is conservatives who do not want to take care of and or fund various health care, other fucking social safety nets for the family, for women, children, or men, or anyone else. So do not talk to me about hardening your heart around children, because see, that's what they do. They installate themselves. These people installate themselves. A right-wing conservative installates themselves with a fucking American flag, and they drape themselves in the flag, and they surround themselves with children so that they become almost immune to any attack or criticism of their fucking crooked asses. And that's what they do. So they do that, and now I guess he's using women to try to installate himself or protect himself from anyone attacking him. And now he's literally hiding behind women's skirt tails because, goddamn it, everyone knows he's a bullshit artist. But that's what he does. And I'll live in a goddamn cheap motel and watch cockroaches shit in front of me, and I'm my toothbrush, and I live in the car because that's men. That's what we do. It wasn't hard. Then you fat fuck, you haven't never ran a day in your life without eating. Now, like, I'm not sure you've ever ran an hour without eating. But you're gonna sit there and lecture the rest of us. You're just like a fucking feminist, and you support free speech right now just about the same as you support don't tread on me until you're talking about a gay person. And right now you support free speech because it applies to you, but the minute it has to apply to someone else, you don't support that either, and you know it. So, that's my fucking opinion. What a fucking crook. All of you right-wing assholes are fucking crooks. And you left-wing idiots are much better. So yeah, that's that. P666.